Hi, I'm Dr. Judy Gooch. I'm a rehabilitation doctor, and I work with people who have had brain injuries. Might be brain injury from trauma, maybe from a stroke, a tumor, cerebral palsy. I'm also with the nonprofit organization Brainstorm for Brain Injury. You can look that up. I'm going to be sharing some stories of people that I've seen in clinic that have had brain injury. I want to do that so we can better understand brain injury because it is not well understood and it is really quite common. I also want to share so that we can help people with brain injury find help to improve. Today I'm going to talk about Tim. It's not his real name. 8 months ago, Tim was in a car accident and he had a brain injury. He hit his head on the window. He ended up in the hospital for a few days. He was pretty out of it, had difficulty walking. And then he made a really pretty rapid turnaround. And so he went home and no follow-up was arranged. He was just told to go back to school in a week. Before the injury, Tim was an A student. He was in sports. He wanted to go on to become a doctor. After the brain injury, he went back to school and he really struggled to get C's. He had headaches every day and he was fatigued and couldn't do nearly what he could do prior to the injury. So he was really frustrated and really depressed. So 5 months after the injury, somehow he came to me. And sure enough, the symptoms that he was experiencing are really consistent with brain injury. Fatigue is one of the most common symptoms. Headaches are super common. Thinking difficulties are common. Attention, short-term memory, executive functioning, which is planning and organizing. Those are often thinking skills that are affected with brain injury. And that's why Tim was really struggling in school. So right off the bat, I suggested that he take brain breaks. After a brain injury, your brain is just on overdrive. It's working harder than it did before, and that is super fatiguing. And the more fatigued you get, the harder it is to function. And so if you can just take a brain break about every hour for about 5 minutes, where you go to a quiet place, you shut down your brain as much as you can, you just let things settle. That can make a huge difference in your functioning. Then you don't go into overdrive and decompensate and become as fatigued. I also referred Tim to cognitive therapy. Cognitive therapy is thinking therapy. Usually it's done by a speech therapist who's trained in working with brain injury patients, but it might also be with an occupational therapist, maybe a neuropsychologist. And this therapist can help people learn to compensate for thinking difficulties, work on improving attention, work on improving executive functioning. They can also really help you structure your day, again, so that you don't overdo it, you function optimally. So I saw Tim back. I saw Tim back last week. And he was doing much better. I was actually kind of surprised just at how well he was doing because he hadn't done well for months and months after the injury. He no longer was having headaches. His fatigue was much, much better. School was going better. So it was wonderful. So anyway, now it's summer and Tim is talking about going back to school and he's going to take all of his classes, 8 hours worth of classes. And then he said, well, can I also go back to work full time? And I thought, oh, it's not such a good idea Because what can happen after a brain injury is as you start to get better, you want to do everything that you did before. And you go ahead full force, and then you crash. And then you think, I can't do it. I'm really not better. You get really discouraged. So it's super important to start back into things slowly. So I told Tim, well, just get started in school. We'll see how that goes. And if you struggle with that, if that's too much, we'll cut back a little bit on your classes. If it's not too much, then gradually you can get back into work. So again, it's getting back into things gradually. Also, we need much more cognitive therapy, and people need to be more aware of it. There are ways to help after brain injury. An experienced cognitive therapist is just invaluable. There's not enough of them. We live in a big city, and there's really just a few here who are experienced in brain injury. So hopefully over time, and as we learn more about brain injury, we can develop more and better cognitive therapy as well as other treatments for brain injury.